everyone, a very warm welcome to the Africa-China Trade Solutions Webinar 2021 with the theme Facilitating Africa-China Trade, the role of Stanbic IBTC Bank. Stanbic IBTC Bank, as we all know, is a subsidiary of Stanbic IBTC Holdings, a member of Standard Bank Group, which is Africa's largest bank by assets. I am Nancy Naji, the moderator for this webinar. I am excited to have you all here. It is a wonderful day here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, and I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all of you that are present here. This webinar will provide us with more insight into the Africa-China Trade Solution, acronymed ACT, ACTS, because you will hear that a couple of times within this webinar. This initiative was launched in 2019 with a vision to dominate trade and investment between Nigeria and China. Trade between Africa and China is vital as it plays an important role in Africa's economic development. We know that China is the second largest economy in the world. China is Africa's largest trading partner. On the other hand, Nigeria-China trade doesn't go unnoticed, as China is Nigeria's biggest trading partner. Now, let's talk numbers a bit, as the market is all about trends and numbers so that we can better understand what I'm talking about. Last year, in a global lockdown, Nigeria-China trade grew 0.7% to about $13.66 billion. So let's go figure that out. In this webinar today, we will discuss challenges and explore the business and investment opportunities and prospects of the Africa-China trade corridors with special focus on Nigeria-China, which I'll shed light on the strategic institutional partnerships that we've seen involving ICBC, which is Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, which was ranked the biggest bank in the world in 2017 and 2018, the partnership between ICBC and the appointed agent Zhejiang International Trading Supply Chain Company Limited, also known as Guano, Standard Bank, and Stanbic IBTC. We shall examine the impact of Africa, so our free trade area, on China-Africa trade, as well as the ways in which Stanbic IBTC and Standard Bank can assist and facilitate trade for clients under these prevalent market conditions. But as we delve in, let me take us through little housekeeping. Various speakers that will be introduced are expected to turn on their cameras and look into the camera lenses when they make their presentations. Please put your mobile phones on silent mode, our participants. And if you have questions in the course of the presentations, please type them into the chat box. I will bring them up during the question and answer session. Now, without further ado, you're welcome on board as we take off on this ACT webinar flight. I guess we are cruising on 36,000 feet. And as we have taken off, let me introduce the next speaker, or our first speaker. Our first speaker has transversed and served in different capacities within the Stanbic IBTC family. In fact, I remember that when the Central Bank of Nigeria announced the currency swap agreement with China in 2018, Demola Shogunle was the chief executive of the banking arm, Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC, when the Africa-China Banking Center was commissioned in Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos is Nigeria's commercial capital. That center was built to build a bridge that creates possibilities between two markets. Join me as I introduce and heartily invite to deliver the welcome address the Chief Executive of Stanbic IBTC Holdings, Demola Shogunle.
Yes, thank you very much. Good day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for attending this virtual event. We are highly honored on behalf of the staff and management at Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC. Say a big thank you. We are delighted to present the Africa-China Trade Solutions, popularly called ACTS, an initiative that is designed to improve trade relations between Nigeria and China. ACTS is a premier solution for African importers to get exclusive access to accredited trade agents, China. We are leveraging our relationship with the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC, to facilitate our customers' trade transactions and grow their businesses. The pathway towards building a good business climate involves the development of our trade relations. Trade relations between Nigeria and Asia, especially China, will increase the prosperity of the nation. This is because China requires various Nigerian raw materials, and this presents an opportunity for Nigerian exporters to leverage their products and cargo to Chinese businesses and importers. Nigeria also needs Chinese investments and technology. So this is a mutually beneficial business platform. It's a super business platform, whichever way you look at it. We aim to simplify imports and export trade relations between the two countries, as every economy in the world profits from international trade, which is an integral part of GDP growth for any nation. This proposition offers a broad ecosystem of services that equips African and Chinese businesses to leverage trade and growth opportunities in the international trade community. Being a customer-centric institution, Stanbic IBTC remains committed to its corporate purpose of putting its customers and stakeholders at the heart of its business and making life easier and better through innovation. We are granting customers and traders super access to international suppliers and manufacturers in China with digital platforms and other top-notch technology solutions. Stanbic IBTC continues to explore more avenues for foreign business development with Chinese suppliers. We continue to ease trade. We continue to annex Africa's potential to be one of the leading global economies in the years to come. We hope, and we actually truly believe, that this event will continue to foster sustainable partnerships and improve market trade relations between Africa on one side and China on the other. Thank you once again for attending, and you are welcome to the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Demola, for the opening address. You've heard it from the Chief Executive of Stanbic IBTC Holdings. Stanbic IBTC is committed to fostering trade as well as market relationship. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. This webinar will help to make us harness the potentials of the Africa-China trade and business relationship. Thank you very much again, Demola. For those joining us, I've seen that we have more people on the platform joining us now. I'd like to welcome you to the Africa-China Trade Solutions webinar, the role of Stanbic IBTC in facilitating Africa-China trade. Now, here to share insights on the Nigerian economy, where we were, where we are now, and the road ahead. Off road, but we can navigate it, is the regional head of equity research, West Africa Standard Bank Group.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. To talk through my thoughts on the Nigerian economy today, I will look at 5 key areas and themes. One, will talk through COVID-19 and how it's affecting our world. Secondly, look at GDP trend in Nigeria and our outlook on GDP. Also look at inflation, drivers, trends and outlook, and look at the FX market, which is quite critical for trade and our views on that. And then lastly, we'll look at government revenue and debt position for the country. And to talk through COVID-19 and the trend, yeah, particularly if you look at the next chart, is that from a Nigerian standpoint, we're clearly at I would say the tip or clearly in the third wave. And if you look at other countries as well, I think what's also clear when you look at rising cases from the environments like Australia is that the trend is also rising as well. And so in spite of increasing vaccinations, you're seeing new variants that is creating risks to global growth. And when one looks at it from a Nigerian perspective, look on oil is quite critical. And so our view, particularly around oil, is that there's clearly more downside risk given the cases and how that affects global growth. And so so from its supply standpoint, from next year, Nigeria to be able to increase output based on OPEC quotas, the outlook on economic growth still remains critical. I think what might be positive from standpoint is the view on interest rates. And so if one considers that, particularly when you look at global and more developed markets, rates to still remain low over the near term, even though from a US perspective, there's expectations to start tapering on bond purchases this year, ability to still borrow at relatively lower rates, particularly from the developed market, still remains. So if one looks at the Nigeria relative to other countries, it's clearly low, but if level of improvement, and one still sees that very strong room for improvement. And the reality from our position is that we see limited avenues for government to restrict movement just because of limited capacity for government to support individuals to stay out of work. And so our expectations is that unlike the first wave, we would see limited restriction of economic activity. We look at the next slide. From a GDP standpoint, last week the National Bureau of Statistics announced the growth in GDP for the second quarter was up 5%. Our expectations going into that was an 8% expectation. And so even though it was lower than our expectations and consensus expectations as well, Bloomberg consensus was around 5.6%. It's still a positive improvement. It's really driven more from the low base effect. So if you consider that this time last year, or let's say the second half of second quarter of 2020 relative to second quarter of 2021, there was far more restrictions in movement. One could understand why we've seen this strong boost. I think for us, what we find interesting from the data was that trade was the strongest driver of growth. So if you look at the chart on my left-hand side, you'd see trade picking up to about 22%. And that's the first positive print we've seen on the trade sector since 2019. So there's been that contraction. And if one looks at the trend in trade as a sector since 2016, it's been contracting. So in 2016, 16% of GDP. Now, as at the end, around 15% of GDP. And part of the reasons why we've seen that contraction has been the stronger focus on the federal government for backward integration. So there's been limited focus on imports and a concerted effort to drive local production, drive manufacturing sector to depend more on local imports. inputs. And so one can understand why we've seen that contraction. But beyond trade, we've seen positive trend in the ICT sector. That was up by 5%. So even though it's pulled off from the level of growth we saw previous years, but it's still been positive. Manufacturing as well, a strong driver of growth in Q2, and construction sector as well. And so our expectations for 2021 from a GDP for a 2% growth in GDP, which is still positive to the contraction we saw last year. So the economy contracted by 1.9% in 2020. For 2022, we expect an improvement to about 3% from a GDP position. So you still do expect in the teens. Our expectations for the year is for inflation to settle around. Expectation is for inflation to settle around 15.5%, relative to the point where it is right now. So as at July, inflation print was at 17%, which is been an improvement from the 18 level, and high food inflation has been that key drive, high level of inflation. And so whilst we expect an improvement to 15.5, we still expect food inflation to remain a challenge. So if one thinks about the insecurity issues we having, particularly in the food belt part of the country, and the conflict between the herdsmen, and that will continue to disrupt food supply and impact on food prices. So we've seen food inflation at that 20% handle for some time, and that remains the key risk. So tariff adjustments could still create a risk for petrol, because the government has put in a budget for subsidy for 2021 that reduces that risk on inflation from a petrol price point of view. For our view on the currency, we still do that band between the parallel market and the official market to remain for some time. And part of the reasons why we expect that is because we've seen a reduction in supply, particularly in the I and EFX window and I and EFX market. That's the investors and exporters foreign exchange window. And if one looks at the trend in March 2020, so pre the pandemic relative to now, you see, particularly if you look at the chart on my right hand, you see that collapse in window. And part of the reasons why that has been the case is you've seen foreign investors, particularly foreign portfolio investors, pull out of the market because of the backlog that has built up, and you haven't seen them come back in step up supply into that market. But if you look at the chart as well, you see that there's clearly room for improvement, and one would expect that for foreign portfolios investors to come back in, would have to clear off that backlog and allow some element of flexibility in the market for foreign portfolio investors to come in, and also for that margin between the parallel market and the official market to thin out as well. And so some of the positives one might see, particularly looking at the FX market, one was the allocation of $3.35 billion by the IMF, the SDR, which automatically boosts Nigeria's FX liquidity. And then also the Senate had approved $6.1 billion of borrowings from the foreign market through Eurobonds. That as well should boost our reserves by over $9 billion. So if you look at it from that standpoint, it clearly gives the central bank room to clear off the backlog. So if we go on to the next slide, here we talk to our views on government revenues and also debt sustainability. And if you've been tracking the media for some time now, particularly since the pandemic, it's been clear that our revenues haven't been able to meet up with our end. And so if you look at revenues from a debt to revenue standpoint, it's peaked considerably. I think the last figures as at June 2020 show that I think about 90% of our revenues was used for debt servicing, which is clearly unsustainable. And if you look at previous trends, so it was still at a sustainable level in 2015 when it was below 30%. But above that level becomes a challenge. And so whilst from a debt to GDP standpoint, there's limited concern, but we clearly need to do more on the revenue side. And I think a positive one can draw, particularly from the Petroleum Industry Act, is that if that increases investment into that sector and boosts government revenue, that should improve that ratio and bring it closer down to below 50, which is a reasonable position in our view. And so in summary and in closing, I will highlight a few of our forecasts for this year and going into next year as well. That's the next slide. From a GDP standpoint, we expect the country to grow at 2% in 2021, an improvement to 3% in 2022. From a current account standpoint, we still expect a deficit this year, and it's only up until 2014 we expect a positive position. Expect inflation to settle at 15.5% this year, improve to 12.4% in 2022. From a monetary policy standpoint, we expect monetary policy rate to remain at 15.5% this year, maybe reduced to 11% next year, whilst from a currency standpoint, we expect the official rate to end the year at 430 naira a dollar. So I will pause now and hand over to Nancy.
Thank you for your valuable insights and excellent presentation. At least the forecast from you would help, make us understand where the Nigerian economy is at now and moving ahead. Let me just give participants just a few takeaways because at the beginning, the network was not too clear, so you were breaking. But let me just give you a quick rundown of what Muyiwa said at the beginning. He talked about limited restrictions, talking about COVID restrictions. He also talked about the upsides in trade, GDP numbers, the 5.01% that was released by NDS just last week, economic growth of 5.01%, upsides for trade. So what does that tell? That should be a sector that we should all be interested in. GDP expectation is mentioned it earlier. Clashes between farmers and herdsmen continue to remain a risk. Government revenue, 90% of revenue used to for debt servicing. The debt to GDP not sustainable. That's debts to GDP. Debt servicing to GDP is not sustainable. You've heard the forecast, and that is the slide on the screen. Thank you again, Muyiwa, for your valuable insights and excellent presentation. Our next speaker understands the market and business relationship between Africa and China and is able to leverage this trade corridor. He has helped acquire, manage, as well as preserve the wealth of high net worth individuals when he headed the private banking business for Standard Bank South Africa. He is the current head, Africa-China Trade, Standard Bank Group. Join me as I welcome Lutando Vuba for his presentation on Africa-China Trade Solutions offering. Over to you, Lutando.
Thank you, Nancy, and a good morning to all our attendees joining from Nigeria and other parts of the world. As Nancy has indicated, I head up Africa-China Trade for Standard Bank Group, and it just gives me great pleasure to tell you more about Africa-China Trade Solutions this morning. So I like to always use this quote that we see, which for me is simply and simplifies what the value proposition is. In other words, what is it that we are saying as the bank we offer to our clients when it comes to Africa-China trade solutions? And simply put is we connect African buyers to Chinese suppliers and equally African suppliers to buying opportunities in China through our import and export solutions, which are fitting under this Africa-China trade solutions value proposition that we have. So if we can just go to the next slide. So many of you may be wondering, what is Africa-China trade solution, or how do you connect me to suppliers in China? And really, simply put, is that the bank has gone on to understand what the pain points are for African businesses when it comes to dealing with China, particularly when they are buying from China, dealing with suppliers in China. And a number of the feedback that we receive from most of you has been around, the trust, trusting that the product and the product quality I get is actually what what you have indicated or seeking, and ensuring that the right quantity of goods arrive in Nigeria. And when it comes to the payment terms, I think what the common trend is, if you go into the China market and you're seeking suppliers, you're dealing with any requirement between having to pay 50% upfront for deposit pre-production to 100% at times, depending on the supplier you're dealing with. So those were some of the pain points that were shared, and many others. I'm just highlighting the key ones that we gathered from that. And this is informed, how do we go about creating then this import solution? So what we've done is we've looked at the way that we get a partner on board through our partner bank in China, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, which is ICBC for short. They're the largest bank in China and in the world. And through them, they recommended one of their best clients that could connect us to vetted and trusted suppliers, of which are also banked by ICBC. This was a great starting point, because through that, we are then able to say the suppliers we position or bring to the table to our clients are reputable and the quality assured, and we know who they are. In other words, they are vetted and trusted. And it came to payment terms, we're able to agree that our clients will be required to only do 20 to 30%, but the common trend is 20% deposit when it comes to a transaction up front, and then the balance can then be financed either by a letter of credit or paid once the production is completed. And as part of this as well, then we have a partner that helps our clients, book the shipping to make sure that the goods are arriving in Nigeria to the client's premises. So this has been the thinking that the bank applied, and that is what our import solution is. Really, it's a one-stop shop for an importer in Nigeria to be able to connect to a supplier in China that is trusted. They have assured of quality that they will be getting, and they're able to then spec and indicate what are they looking for. They get quotes through our import partner, and then they're able to pay for their goods and get them in due time. So that is what our import solution is, and simply put. And then our export solution. And export generally garners a bit more complexity. And what we've gone on to understand with this is, what is the regulatory environment, and what does the African exporter need in place to be able to export to China? And we got great guidelines on this, and we've gone on to understand where's the demand, right, for those African products. Particularly would understand for Nigeria where's the demand, and we're able to then speak to the relevant partners that we have to connect then to off-takers in China or Chinese importers, and then bring our exporters from Nigeria to those opportunities. And we do this through a number of ways. We either do it through directly connecting with those buyers or importers in China, or we connect through what we have quarterly, these virtual matchmaking events. In other words, virtually we're able to bring you as a client, and match you to up to 3 potential buyers in China. And we've kicked this particular offering off last year. As you'd understand, that 2020 presented us a number of challenges, but as the bank, we were still committed to really being close to our clients, partnering for growth with them, and really showing that it can be through a number of ways. And connecting then buyers and sellers virtually was one of the ways that we enabled that particular approach to partnering with our clients for growth. So this is what the export solution is when it comes to the virtual connection. And the other one is through ICBC's e-commerce platform. So it's an online store that ICBC's client base has access to. And when I talk client base, I'm talking about a vast number of corporates and businesses, commercial businesses that are within their frame. And just to give you a sense of what we're talking, just ICBC's corporate clients alone boast a number of over 25 million corporate customers. So that's the kind of audience that e-commerce platform has access to. And what we're able to do is connect then, the African clients onto that platform where they can showcase their products on there and then connect to potential buyers. And then lastly, they have flagship Expo events in China. A lot of Expo events happen in China in a calendar year. There are many of them, but we pick the ones that are very key and the magnitude in terms of the potential to connect with potential buyers. And one of those is the China International Import Expo, or CIIE as its abbreviation is well known. And that happens every year around November. And then the other one is the China Africa Economic and Trade Expo. And this one happens every 2 years. And I'm particularly fond of it because it is really China just buying from Africa, whereas CIIE is China buying from the world. We then connect our clients to this opportunity by having a stand and having display for their products. And as you can see on the screen, it will just give you a breakdown of just some of these points that I was speaking to around the channels that we use to connect, the African exporters to the Chinese importers through our export solution. And all of this is what we are talking to when we talk the Africa-China trade solutions. Next slide. All right, whilst the next slide is loading, I just thought I'd show some visuals from, the virtual matchmaking that I just spoke to give, our attendees a sense of what it looks like, because I know just speaking to it doesn't always give one a very tangible idea of what it looks like. But on the screen, you can see some visuals from our previous matchmaking events that were held when we started this, which was last year in October. And just some numbers of how many participants we've had. And in this year, we are now hosting these quarterly, and some of the products that we've had matchmaking on has been macadamia nuts, cashew nuts, cocoa, coffee bean, cassava chips, to mention a few. And we've had some of our Nigerian clients actually participate and really have some good successes out of this. Next slide. And this is just the last slide to show you some visuals of the expos that I spoke to. The two pictures at the top are showing you the China Africa Economic and Trade Expo, and this was in 2019. And the pictures at the bottom are showing you our expo at the China International Import Expo, or CIIE, and this was last year in 2020, where with the challenges around travel, we were still able to get our clients' products in China at this expo, and they were exhibited and represented by our colleagues in our China office. And there were some clients who actually were able to connect to buyers and had those buyer opportunities executed, and they're now in business with those buyers. So I'll leave it here, Nancy, and then we'll pick up the questions in the discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Lutando. Thank you very much for exposing us to the ingredients and tools that the Africa-China Trade Solutions are made of. Very important points there: virtual matchmaking, an online store, creation of a market access. ACT is also able to navigate regulator requirements, favorable payment items, 20 to 30% deposit, 70% paid on when goods are ready to be shipped. So, a partner. I can see that there are a lot of coming in, really, but of course we have a question and answer session, so we'll be taking that. But please continue to drop them in the chat box. I can also see that we have more people joining us in this webinar. So I want to welcome you on board. If you're just joining this webinar, we've had presentations from Muyiwa Oni and Lutando Vuba, also from the chat box. I did see where a question was being asked if the presentations would be made available. I will tell you now that the presentations will be made available to you. You can send an email to Africa China Banking Center, Stanbic IBTC.com. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is to elucidate on the Guano offerings that you've heard from Lutando Vuba. We would hear now to make us understand how to connect with the right Chinese suppliers while delivering value and also getting the best deals. We'll have the Overseas General Manager, Zhejiang International Trading Supply Chain Company Limited, who will be making his presentation, Mike Zhang. Mike, over to you. Mike, please, if you can hear, Mike, please, can you unmute yourself? Mike, we can't hear you, please. Can you unmute? Good. Thank you, Mike.
Hello,
so
can
please,
you hear me?
can you just,
Can you hear me?
yes,
Okay.
can you start again? Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Muyiwa Oni, Mr. Omyemi Chukua, Mr. Lutando Vuba, Miss Nancy Allo, and all the guests present. I'm Mike from Guano, and I'm very glad to join 2021 Africa China Trade Solution webinar. Our today's speech is divided into 3 parts. For the first, okay. Hello?
Yes, Mike, go ahead, please. You can hear you. Go ahead.
I wonder if you have such kind of experience in the process of trade in China, or where the product delivered by the supplier was quite different from your requirements due to the communication problems, or after receiving the machine from supplier, the after sales service problem is difficult to be solved, or there is urgent purchase series of equipment, but the funds in your hand is too much limited, or you are seeking for a means to ensure the safety of international trade when travel to China become almost impossible. Okay, next please. Hello?
Yes, Mike, go ahead. We can hear you.
Yes, but for the PPT, it's no move now.
Hello, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, but I see the PPT is no move.
To move to the next
Mike,
one.
Mike, can you? Thank you.
Yes.
Move to the next slide. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So today I will bring the good news to you. As Guano, with 20 years of foreign trade experience, can provide you some solution. We have high quality suppliers and a professional QC team can control the quality of the product. professional and international lawyer team, we bound suppliers with contract terms to reduce the risk for the trade process. As the only partner of Stanbic IBTC Bank in China, we can also provide different kinds of payment terms for the trading. In addition, we have got AEO, authorized economic operator customer qualification, making the speed of export declaration and customer clearance fast. Okay, next page. Okay. Guano has exported a lot of high quality products for many years. For example, for the agriculture equipment, construction equipment, and mining equipment. And for the construction equipment, such like the seed planter, harvester, rice mill, and color sorter, and other products. The factory Guano Corporation includes YTO, Zoomland, Maya Photoelectric, and Zhongke Electric, and other products. And for the construction and mining equipment, for the product includes the wheel loader, bulldozer, cranes, and the factory with corporation such as Shanyi, Shantui, XCMG, Xinlu Truck, Xinlu Mark, and so on. Hello? Okay.
Hello, Mike, are you still okay?
Yes. For the solar product, for the product include the water pump, solar power generator system, solar lights, and so on. We are working with the first-line brand such as Jinke, Jinao, and Taliesin, and Longji, and so on. For the amusement, we also have all kinds of manufacturing line, such as the labeling machine, peanut oil press machine, brick machine, and chicken slot equipment, and so on. For the amusement equipment, including the roller coaster and the Ferris wheel, and the second-hand cars, including second-hand minibus, second-hand oil tank, second-hand truck, and so on. And the brand we are creating is Yutong, Xinlu Truck, Toyota, Xinlu, and so on. We are also the only qualified enterprise exporting second-hand car in EU. Thank you. Next. Actually, we have a platform for the supply system called the Quality of China. Then you can find easily from here for the qualified suppliers, also many high quality products. If there is demand, you can contact our platform customer service. Okay. I believe that through the sharing just now, we have a general understanding of a product and service in Guano. Then, what is the difference between the cooperation with Guano and the other suppliers? Please come to understand the rules of Guano's ECAP. This simple picture shows the difference between traditional foreign trade and cooperation with Guano. If you cooperation with Guano, if you cooperation with the supplier directly, there may be the risk of quality control, fund security, and risk of the process in the trade. But if you cooperation with Guano and the Stanbic IBTC Bank, and the Stanbic IBTC Bank will not only ensure the safety of your funds, but also will help you with the financing once you meet the basic requirements. Guano and the Stanbic IBTC Bank, as the partner, will help reduce all kinds of trade risks together. Guano will review the qualification of suppliers and help you to inspect the suppliers, also checking the goods, also following up the process of the order. Even if the goods are shipped abroad, Guano will do his best to help clients to solve all the problems. Okay.
Hello, Mike.
Yes, next.
Hello, Mike. You have just
Yes.
to the end.
Okay.
Just give me 1 minute so that you end. Thank you.
Hello? Next, please.
Yes.
Okay. Some thoughts on China ethical trade. With the rest of materials such as steel and copper and so on, the sea freight, USD rate, and the spread of various worldwide. So the business between China and Africa is still facing the challenges. Secondly, with the rapid growth of China ethical trade, the demand of construction and agriculture equipment, construction equipment, and the solar industry is on the high rise. Also, for the more and more enterprise in Africa began to export all kinds of products to China. For the third one, compared with the trade in the past, most clients pay more attention to the quality of the product and the after-sales service, especially for the fund. Thank you very much for all your listening. Guano is confident and determined to work with ACTS team to provide a better solution for everyone. This time is limited. For further what you need, please contact me through WhatsApp or email. My best wishes to you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that presentation. Thank you for your insights on how to get in touch and what Guano actually offers. So thank you very much, Mike. You can get in touch with Guano by sending an email to Africa China Banking Center at stanbicibtc.com. I can see in the chat box a lot of the participants asking questions about, exporting their items from Nigeria to China. We'll come to the Q&A session in a bit. To Africa China Banking Center at Stanbic IBTC. Now we are going into the panel session. Let me start with the only lady in the panel. It's ladies first, you know that. Our first panelist has over 2 decades of experience working with economic stakeholders to build and scale businesses while also positioning her business with her skills and expertise. She's the managing director, Steams and Stitches Nigeria Limited, Omoyemi Chukura. Our other panelists, you've heard their presentation. Head Africa-China Trade Standard Bank Group, Muyiwa Oni, Regional Head of Equity Research, West Africa Standard Bank. Last but not least, Mike Zhang, Overseas General Manager, Zhejiang International Trading Supply Company Limited. You just heard Mike's presentation. So we'll be going into the panel session right now. And let me start with Omoyemi Chukura. Omoyemi, how has Stanbic IBTC Africa-China Trade Solution Act changed trading experience with China for you? Omoyemi, can you hear me? What has been the experience in trading with China? Yes, with China leveraging on the Africa-China Trade Solutions offering of the bank.
Thank you. Working with Gourmet, the African trade platform with Stanbic is a fantastic product that the bank has given to entrepreneurs. Considering that there's been pandemic and for over a year now we've not been able to travel. It's easy to source on so many platforms in China where you can find suppliers and order, but with the pandemic a lot has changed. A lot of people can't travel, there's travel restrictions, and even some factories that we worked with for years have closed down. But working with Gourmet, I must say that sourcing has been made very easy, and there's protection of your funds. The sourcing, the procurement, the QC, and the eventual shipping is been made seamless. With the pandemic and not being able to travel, we've had situations where people have ordered things and what they've made for them is substandard or it's not good. But working with Gourmet, it makes all of this easy, and it removes the stress of wondering whether you're going to be scammed or anything like that. The sourcing, they give you so many verified suppliers to work with. They try to get you a good lead time, the target price that you're looking for, they try to work with that. And I must commend them for the feedback. The communication is excellent. Every stage of your production, they're getting back to you, telling you this is what we've gotten, this is how it's gone. So even talking to your own clients in Nigeria, you have that assurance like you're being in China or you're producing the items yourself. And then shipping, everything is made easy. So for me, it's one of the most outstanding things that Stanbic has done, especially for established entrepreneurs and oncoming entrepreneurs, because going to China will cost you a lot of money right now, from the visa to getting your travel documents and all of that. But working with government, you're actually starting off your business saving money before even doing all of these things you want to do. And the fear of, okay, I'm working with this supplier, I've done this particular product, is good, I want to make it again, and then you're faced with the factory closing down. With government, they can look for another company that will do exactly the same thing, delivering the same value that you've gotten. So it gives you security, it protects your fund, and it gives you room to grow your business. And also you're making a lot of savings. So for me, that's what I've gotten from working with the African Trade Desk.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Omoyemi, for that insight. Thank you. Please, we will learn from your experience today on this webinar. I guess that some other questions will come to you from the Q&A as someone that is working with that desk. Now, let me move over to Muyiwa, and let me ask this question, Muyiwa. Are there significant similarities between the African as well as Chinese economies before and after the pandemic?
So I guess one will argue that we're still, but if you look at the position of the African economy post-pandemic, we're still growing sub pre-pandemic levels. And even when one looks at forecasts by bodies like the IMF and the World Bank, expectations is that one will see a stronger recovery by 2022 into 2023. And so the reality is that the restrictions and limitations the pandemic still introduces limit growth opportunities for the economy right now. And that's why if one looks at the commodity market, for example, you continue to see volatility in there as the market continues to look at economic growth and at what point we start seeing normalization from a growth perspective.
Okay. Mike, I would also pose the same question to you. Mike, if there are differences or similarities, especially from the Chinese economy side, pre and during, as well as post-pandemic. Mike, over to you. Hello, Mike. Okay. While we wait for Mike, let me ask Lutando, what impact do you think that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement have on Africa-China trade relations? What are the ways that the African as well as the Chinese markets can actually benefit so far? That's to Lutando.
Thanks, Nancy. Very good question. One that I definitely encounter a lot more in the last couple of months. I think someone just needs to go on mute, please. So the way to think about this is that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and what that encompasses and seeks to achieve is something that for us all as Africans to get excited about, and it certainly would gear us in the right way in terms of really driving African economies to diversify into the manufacturing space and become suppliers within the region. But I always say that the fact of the matter is just, in terms of the immediate state and capacity that our African countries have to play into that space is currently not there. And I think as we bolster up our different markets that are getting and increasing the capacity to manufacture and supply into the region, the input products certainly become an even increased demand and need to really to get us there. And what that practically means is, and we're even seeing this in the data in terms of what's being imported from China by our African clients through our import solution, is machinery and equipment, because that's ultimately what will grow us into that space. The fact is, whilst we're very excited and committed, and as a bank, certainly aligned to supporting the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, practically the current economies of scale sit with China when it comes to manufacturing. And I think it's about strategically leveraging that capability through our solution to really bolster and grow our ability to produce and supply into the African region. So I see the bank's role being that, but also playing into the space where how we're solutioning with our Africa-China trade solutions being the framework of how we solution, obviously, when it comes to regional trade. And one good starting point for us has been to look at how do we connect, our clients in each of the markets that are looking to source specific products. And we've certainly seen some of those in being able to connect clients where we'll have a client from a particular country, let's say Nigeria is looking to import particular products that's being made in South Africa, and we're able to bring those two worlds together. And similarly to how we've solved for, with our import solution, there's that trust embedded in it. Our client can take comfort in who they're dealing with, because it's also then is still a client of Stanbic or Standard Bank in that particular market. So those are ways in which I see that playing out, and the bank is positioning itself. And the most key and important one then is to play a very, very influential and pivotal role in terms of the financing element. How do you then make that process ease in terms of facilitating it from a financing perspective? So I see those being imperatives that the bank can play in and what it can do for that particular direction for the continent when it comes to trade.
Thank you very much, Lutando. Let's go back to Mike. Mike, I hope we have you back so that you can answer the question around the similarities or differences between African as well as the Chinese economies, pre pandemic, during the pandemic and post-pandemic. We are not even really out of the pandemic yet, especially with this Delta variant. So speak to us from the China perspective.
Hello. For the
Yes.
virus, have a big influence to China economic. I want to divide into three parts to explain about this. Firstly, I have a high impact to the China manufacture. Before the virus, China manufacture all the electrical, all the suppliers for the material, everything is steady for the raw material, for the steel, for the copper, for all kinds of plastic, for the paper, everything for the raw material is steady. But after the virus spreading, everything is increasing. Everything is shortage. So since last year, for the steel and copper is increased about 30% as before. So for Chinese manufacturer now also meet a big challenge. Is for all the parts, raw material, everything increased too much. Secondly, it's for the China foreign trade business. Before, most of the client travel from Africa to China. It's very easy, but now it is impossible. So most of the client is thinking who we are trustable, we are thinking which will ensure the safety for our international trade. Thirdly is the situation of shipping cost from the dollar exchange rate from dollar to RMB. Also for the online platform trading is more and more popular. For now.
Okay, Mike. Mike, I will come back to you again with another question, but let me come to Muyiwa. And Muyiwa, I would want you to answer the question around the impact of African Continental Free Trade Area on Africa-China trade, how the African as well as Chinese communities are from the proposition to bounce back very quickly. And I would also want to tell, our panelists that we should be brief while answering these questions because we need to attend to a lot of the questions we have on the chat box. Thank you. Muyiwa, please can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And so if one looks at the composition of imports for Africa, for African countries, and if one uses Nigeria as an example, so from a regional perspective, Africa as a whole, Nigeria imports about 3 to 5%, 3 to 2% of our produce or products from other African countries, while for China, depending on the year, ranges between 16 and 22%. And so if one looks at that perspective, even though there's the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement that should come in, the reality is that it will still take a while before Africa can close that gap. And to Latando's point, if one looks at African countries, level of manufacturing capacity is still quite low relative to what we see in China. And I guess there's far more room for collaboration on improving on that. And I think if you look at the parities of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement as well, the focus at the early days is still on services. So from business services, communication services, financial services, transport and tourism seems to be where Africa sees themselves as competitive relative to other environments. And so that's where we're starting from. And so the reality is that at these early stages, there's still far more room for symbiotic facilitation.
Thank you very much, Muyiwa. Let me quickly come to you with a question. What trends do we expect to see with Chinese exporters post-COVID-19? Luthando.
Thank you, Nancy. You're asking specifically for Chinese exporters, right?
Yes. What trends do we expect to see? What are your projections for Chinese exports?
Yeah, I think what we'll continue to see, and in terms of what you're already seeing with Chinese exports, is further growth within the machinery and equipment space, and also in the heavy-duty truck space, as a lot more of the African countries are starting to all look at localized production when it comes to certain products, certain areas, to the point around growing the manufacturing space. And I think we saw this as a very intentional approach by the African governments last year in the third and fourth quarters to really look at what do they start to localize in terms of production. So I think we will continue to see that in terms of exporters, Chinese exporters. And I think the one thing that's worth mentioning around this as well is the balance that Chinese exporters will have to do and probably continue to struggle to do, which is just the fluctuating prices around shipping. Right? The shipping industry has really been hard hit with the just recovering and trying to get back to what would be some form of normalcy or pre-COVID operations. And what we're seeing, and I think the blows that has been dealt, whether it's country lockdowns or just this sheer impact to trade, has really created this bit of an erratic environment for the shipping industry. And I think that has a direct knock-on effect when it comes to the trade that's actually done and facilitated. So I think whilst that impacts the African importer more directly, it is also impacting the Chinese exporters more. And I think there will be some consideration that they'll need to look at how do they balance that. And some of that balance may be on their margins, or it may be on just, what kind of arrangements do they go into with some of those importers that have planned and regular sort of volumes that they import. So I do see some of that shift that the Chinese exporters will have to explore, purely because of just how much this impact of the shipping industry has had on trade.
Okay. Luthando, I'll still stick with you. Just 2 seconds as this question is still posed to you. How has Stanbic IBTC facilitated trade financing, payments, collections to aid pre-shipment and post-shipment between Nigerian and Chinese businesses? Does the bank provide in terms of, of those services?
Yes. Thanks, Nancy. We have been pushed, particularly in Stanbic IBTC business, to think differently and to think around the current regulatory environment from a CBN perspective and, its impact in terms of trade and payments. And one of the things that we've done is to look at, how do we leverage, the ability to do settlements in CNY or, the Chinese yuan or RMB. And that's been one of the ways then in which that we've tried to diversify what the offering is to clients in order to help settle with their transactions. And a focused approach around what, CBN has been sort of allowing for imports has also helped us in that front. And one of the other things that we're currently exploring is how do we get into big arrangements, and it kind of links to my previous point around, Chinese exporters that are having to think differently. And how do we use, our capability as Stanbic? How do we use a relationship with ICBC and obviously with Guano, and to come up with a special sort of solutioning for those clients that are saying, this is what I'm importing, this cycle, this is how we can facilitate the payment, and particularly look at how do we then address those particular needs. So it has meant that we start to look at how do we diversify the settlements. It has meant that we start to narrow focus on how do we solve for for different clients, and I think as when that happens, start to get back to less restrictive measures from a central bank perspective, we'll continue to push on this way. But certainly for us, from a bank perspective, we'll continue looking at what else do we explore that helps, and facilitate our clients' trade needs. And then that's currently what we've done, and we've seen great take up and momentum from the settlement through Chinese yuan, and it's something that Stanbic IBTC is able to do. It's an offering that we're able to really drive and push on to those clients that are seeking it.
Thank you, Luthando. As we wrap up this panel session, it will also be great to finalize this panel session with the lady in the panel, as I started with her. Omoyemi, I would want you to address the question about what role does Guano play in connecting African importers to Chinese exporters, to African importers to Chinese importers, to African exporters. That's different levels of trade. Omoyemi, please, you can address that.
Thank you, Nancy. Like I said earlier, the structure that government has is quite excellent. So it's about trusting in the process that they've already established. If you go with your request, the requests go, the way they handle requests goes from different levels. If you trade a lot in China, you know that one of the biggest problems you have is the MOQ. So even with products that have lower MOQs, which is the problem a lot of importers from Nigeria, especially if they're just starting out importing, doing business in China. They can look for suppliers to handle this. So from the lowest to the highest level of importing, depending on your request, they are well equipped to handle it. I've personally been to their office in Guano, and I must tell you, the setup is quite impressive. I've been to their office, I've spoken with them, I've met with them. So from even when we have very low MOQ orders, they're able to get suppliers for us, as to when we have huge productions that would normally take a lot of work, trying to verify the supplier, being careful with your money, trying to do the QC. They go to the factory, they do the QC. The last order we had with them, they did videos, sent video. The feedback was a lot. They tried everything. And this particular order, it came from a client who had ordered themselves from China, and all the items they ordered came terrible. It was rejected. So it was something that I was even scared about. And it wasn't my line of specialty per se, but I gave it to Mike. Mike handled it for me, and it was excellent. So for me, even to ask other people, other entrepreneurs, to come on board to Stanbic and join the African trade, it's something I can say because it's something that I've experienced. I have an experiential knowledge of it. I know it works. I know that all the steps you need to follow doing business in China is well looked at here. When you think of being protected and having your funds secured and getting good suppliers to work with, which are the key things in China. Even if you have a good supplier, like I said earlier, Chinese business is funny. The factory you worked with for 10 years, they can tell you tomorrow, we're not producing these items anymore. So what happens to you if this is the only source you know? So you're given access to limitless sources to produce or order whatever you want to order. There is the guarantee of you making your payments and knowing that this factory that I've paid to is verified, your procurement is secured, and your QC is well done, because you can have even a verified supplier and they make mistake. The biggest problem in doing business in China is the after sales. To ship anything from China to Nigeria, it's a lot of work. When your product gets here and you have problem with it, what do? If you're the one that has transacted this business yourself. So having a bank that even provides this kind of platform is excellent, which is one of the reasons why, I'm passionate about banking with Stanbic. The African China Trade Desk and the platform is excellent. And government looking at their setup in China, it's not just about what Mike is saying. I've been there, I've done business with them, so I'm talking from experience. It's excellent. Whatever level of, if you're a huge exporter or you're just starting out your business and you're working with the bank and you want to approach this desk, I would definitely recommend it.
Thank you very much. Yes, you have. Thank you very much. And that wraps up the panel session. So I want to say thank you to my panelists, Luthando Vuba, Muiwa Oniomoyemi Tukura, and Mike Jeng, but you still stick around because we have a lot of questions. And let's go into the questions and answer session very quickly. So many questions. Let me start by taking the question from Anum Kupa Zola. The question is, will sourcing the yuan be much easier than sourcing the United States dollar? Can importers be sure that they can pay off the yuan bills on time without having to raise any short-term loans? I think that question should go to Luthando. Luthando, did you hear the question?
Repeat it, Nancy.
Okay. Will sourcing the yuan easier than sourcing the dollar, the US dollar? Can importers be sure that they can pay off yuan bills on time without having to raise any short-term loans?
That may be a case by case in terms of the last bit of that question of being able to settle, but settlement in yuan, definitely we're able to do it with the suppliers through Guano, and we're able to source the yuan through Stanbic IBTC. So that, as a starting base, is something that we can do, so we can assist God. And I think, depending on a specific transaction and the terms of it, we can speak to the other elements, which is hard to do so when you don't have the details. But I think the short answer to that is yes, and we're able to help you source, able to settle in yuan, and obviously it gives one a good sort of comparison, because in some cases we have seen it working out a bit cheaper for a client when they're settling in yuan versus dollar.
Okay, Luthando, I'll still stick with you a bit with a question from Juliana. Do you have a tax refund for purchasing LED displays? LED screens can be used for outdoor advertising at shopping malls. If Mike is also on the call, Mike could also add a word to that. Let me read the question again from Juliana. Do you have a tax refund for purchasing LED displays? LED display screens can be used for outdoor advertising and shopping malls. Did you get the question?
I got the question. I wouldn't be able to speak to this particular question. I do rely on my colleague
Mike.
Ade. Yeah, Ade can maybe also pick on it. Over to you, Mike.
Mike? Okay. Mike, are you there?
Pardon?
Okay, Mike.
Yes.
Okay, Mike, did you hear the question?
Not very clear. Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Okay, let me repeat the question. It says, the question is from Juliana. Do you have a tax refund? I don't think it's Mike that can answer this though. But do you have a tax refund for purchasing LED displays? LED display screens can be used for outdoor advertising and shopping malls. Okay, Mike, are you there? Let me move over to, yes. Okay. Mike, it seems we are not connecting with you very well.
Yes.
Okay, Luthando, let me ask you this question from Olabode Oladoyi. And the question is, how do we get connected to the e-commerce platform provided by ICBC? You mentioned the e-platform earlier. So how do participants get connected to that?
I tried to answer that question in the chat, but for the benefit of everyone, can get in touch with our Africa China desk, and I believe when Ade does the closing comments, he can just give details on that, and that will then take you through the process of how you can register for the ICBC Gets platform, and in the process to get on board into that.
Thank you, Lusando. Muyiwa, let me bring you in to answer this question by Akim Olajide. Can we say we are growing if we have a GDP growth of 5% on one hand and inflation of 15%? Our inflation definitely is over 15%. I think it's about 17% now. Don't you think that growth we are witnessing is simply price differentials and not productivity growth? Muyiwa. Muyiwa, can you hear me? Okay, since we can get Muyiwa now. Lutando, can you please answer this question from Uchi Michael? How do we bridge the gap of getting Naira and Yuan exchange directly by customers to Chinese dealers?
Okay. I think this one it's what we've embarked on, and what I spoke to earlier about the sourcing of yuan. And I think it really comes down to those specifics of the transaction. So I think this one we have to look, obviously, what is the transaction, what are we sourcing and trying to settle for. And that is really sort of what helps one then speak to, I think, what the question is raising. But from a bank side, we're committed to how do we facilitate this transaction, and here are the options. And I think the person asking the question, it will be best to then get in touch with us and then really look at what is on the table and be able to see what's optimal then for that particular client.
Okay, thank you, Lusando. I hope I'm back to answer the question from Akim Olajide. Are you there? Okay, let me ask that question again. Yes, the question from Akim Olajide. Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so if you look at the GDP numbers published, it's real GDP. So that 5% already accounts for inflation. So if one looks at nominal GDP, you would be adding that 5% to the 17% inflation, which will be 23%. So ideally, the data published by the National Bureau of Statistics is already deflated to take account for movement in prices. So that output backs out price movements.
Okay, thank you very much, Muyiwa. Mike, please, can you answer this question? I think a very important question too by Godbe Chijoke. And it says, is he allowed to export snail into China? Mike, the question is to you. Okay, it seems we can't get Mike. Or let's see if we can take.
Yes. Hello?
Okay, Mike.
Yes.
Mike, please,
Hello?
quickly. Yes, I can hear you. Quickly answer that question. Can snail be exported to China very quickly?
Do you mean snail? Do you mean snail?
Okay.
Do you mean snail?
Okay, so it seems the network is not, friendly from Mike's end.
Nancy.
Yes. Okay. Lusando,
Nancy,
it's Wayne.
Yeah. I would encourage the participant or the attendee to just get in touch with our Africa China desk. We can investigate this one and be able to give them a response answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that's the much we can take on the question and answer segments now. I can see a lot of questions here in the chat box as well as the Q&A. Just like Lusando has said, you can get in touch with the desk. You can also send an email, Africa China Banking Center at stanbicibtc.com. Africa China Banking Center at stanbicibtc.com. They would definitely answer all your questions. So many of the questions here that I can see. So Thank you to our panelists for answering those questions. We are almost at the end of this webinar. All had not just an interesting, but an educating as well as an engaging, webinar on the Africa-China trade solutions. To close this webinar, I'm happy to invite our host, Chief Executive Stanbic IBTC, Wole Adeniyi, who is being represented by Adeniyi Otukomoya, beg your pardon, the head Africa-China Banking Stanbic IBTC Bank. Okay, that's the name. Ade Otukomoya, head Africa-China Bank.
Thank you.
Stanbic IBTC. For the closing remarks. Over to you, Ade.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Ade Otukomaya. You tried very well. Before I go into the before I go into the close, I'd like to thank all the participants and for those questions that are in the box. We will encourage you to please send these questions to the email address that has been given, so that we can come back to you specifically to provide insights and responses to those questions. Yeah, on behalf of my Chief Executive, I'd like to say a big thank you for joining the webinar today, for taking time to be here, and I believe this has been a very impactful session, especially with the seasoned panelists that we have on the call today with practical experiences. As earlier discussed, we are committed to providing solutions to facilitate all your cross-border trade through the Africa-China banking solution in Stanbic IBTC. I believe that African importers whose stock in trade is the importation of goods from Asia, particularly China, have been able to find this session useful, so that your concerns around being defrauded or losing your products, or for those of you who are importing, losing your valued revenue, has been allayed. Using Africa-China trade solution, African importers can have every technical aspect handled by our partners. Your transaction handled without being physically present in China, and also the fear that you may be shortchanged. At Stanbic IBTC, we are well equipped to ensure that importers get the best deal through our solutions and our processes, right from the supplier negotiating and sealing the best deals, validating products to a certain quality, taking full responsibility on your behalf. Guano is able to give you guarantee that everything that you are importing through them are guaranteed, and that is one very key important aspect that we bring to the table. And we are committed to driving Africa's growth and leveraging our existing relationship with ICBC, the biggest bank in the world today. We believe taking advantage of this will give you, our customer, a competitive edge in the marketplace while growing your businesses and volumes. We believe this proposition is of immense value to our customers. We implore qualified businesses operating in Nigeria and across Africa willing to deal with China to take advantage of the opportunities that these solutions bring to you and the offer that is present in the offering. Thank you again for honoring our invitation, and we look forward to doing more and more businesses with you. Thank you from all of us from Stanbic IBTC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a wrap for this Africa-China Trade Solutions Webinar 2021. It has been my pleasure moderating it. I am Nancy Naji. Enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget that all these questions which we've seen in the chat box, I've seen over 80 here. Just like Ade said earlier, you can get in China Banking Center at stanbicibtc.com. On the other hand, you can also call +234 1422 0006 +234 1422 0006 during the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. You can also request to speak to a relationship manager in Africa-China Banking. Enjoy the rest of the day, all of you. We'll see you again next time. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye. 再见. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yemi. Thank you, everybody.